Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to the Once an Orphan podcast. I'm Jasmine, and joining me today is Kimmie. Kimmie, who I met through one of Facebook's adoption groups, shared with me that she has an adoption story that she wouldn't mind sharing. As we know, every adoption story is different. I had a good experience. Kimmie shared with me that her adoption story is somewhat sad, but we're going to get into that. And so I just want to first say thank you, Kimmie, for joining me. And let's get into this story of yours. You were placed for adoption.
So whenever I was born, the state took me. Um, I guess to a step back real quick. So my biological father was like 51 on the birth certificate. Well, the birth, it said that my biological mom, was 18, but I found out she wasn't. She was 13.
Okay.
And in a nutshell, my grandmother, which I'll call my grandma, Um, she had 6 kids and she was living from bridge to bridge. And CPS had caught up with her. So all the family wanted all the kids except for Susie, who is my biological mother. So she had a lot of mental issues. So they put her in a mental facility. And my grandmother didn't want her baby there. So she hired a guy to break her out. So the story I was told from my aunt was that he broke her out of the mental facility. He was in his 50s. She was 13, and he got her pregnant. With that being said, when my grandma found out, she said, "You either marry my daughter or I will send you to prison for the rest of your life." So he divorced his wife, whom he already had 10 kids with, and they did a fake birth certificate and they went to California and got married. And then I came along. And so the state took me from them. And I was adopted my mom and dad are the best. My dad was in the Air Force, so I got to travel. And so with that being said, um, I decided to do ancestry to find out pretty much where I came from. I've never really, I mean, I've always wondered because of the age difference. My life, I thought either she was a hoe or he was a cheater. Well, come find out she was mental and he was a cheater, but they got married. And so my aunt told me that she had a baby about every 18 months. And they got married in 1963 and she died in 1986. So that's a lot of kids. And I do know that I'm the oldest. I do know there's a set of twin boys out there. I do know that there's at least one, if not two girls. And I've been blessed to find two brothers and two sisters. And we get along. I mean, it's just great. So, I was set for adoption. And whenever I did ancestry, all of a sudden, all these people in this, I talked with my ancestors, all these people in this black hole that, they didn't care if I ever met because I had such a good family, you know.
Yeah.
All of a sudden there was a first cousin. And I was like, I'm very close. We have a very close family and I'm close to my first cousins. So I thought, wow, that's first cousin. That's really close. So, anyway, so we talked back and forth and he just happened to be a genealogist. And so he was just like, tell me what you do know and I'll see if I can find out where you fit in. So as soon as I said that she was 18 and he was 56, he goes, I know exactly who your parents are because she was really 13, not 18. And he goes, my dad is your biological dad's brother. And he goes, she was never around much, I mean, they didn't come around the family a lot, but that's who he belonged to. And then he told me about how he was married and of course on ancestry and there's all kinds of other siblings, half siblings and stuff. So that's, yeah. So after he broke her out, I was taken from the state um, through my cousin. I was I knew that I had a brother named Chris and a sister named Pam. I was known as Baby Girl Anderson, so that was my birth name. So I started looking up Pamela Anderson. in Miami, Oklahoma. That's hard. The only Pamela Anderson that came up was the movie star. So
Right, right, exactly.
so I'm a skip tracer. Um so I don't know if it's part of because I was adopted, but I enjoy looking for people.
I'm the same. I'm a skip
Oh
tracer
yeah.
also. So, and
Then
I
you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So from the time I got my results back, I mean, my cousin was on it. Boy, next year, no, he's telling me, no, this is what happened and this is what happened. And I mean, they told me about how whenever they were on their way to California, my grandmother had cancer and they were wanting her to die. And I guess they tried to get someone to beat her up and all the way to California. And then she lived. She had been in the hospital in California. Somehow she made it back to Oklahoma before she died. And so that was, had it been the rest of my siblings, they kept one out of all of them. But all the other one, um, Robert just didn't want them to go to any old home. So he went through a church and talked to some people. And so they went out and found people to give their kids to. And
Mm.
Susie, um, she was very mental. She had a lot of mental issues. Um, every time that he would give away one of her kids, then she would lose it. So Robert would go and buy her a baby doll. And so she would sit there and play with the baby doll. And my brother Chris, who he was the first one I met, I finally found him. I found Pam. And talking to Chris, he was telling me that whenever he was younger, because his mom knew Robert and Susie, that she would take him over there because she thought it was important that he knew where he came from. And
Yeah.
so he said the last time he went over there, they had dirt for the floor in the living room, and he got to play with his little trucks. And he noticed there was a whole bunch of babies on the wall, and he thought that was kind of weird. Well, come to find out, every time she had a baby and Robert gave it away, she would go crazy. So he would go buy her a baby doll to satisfy her, to so that she would love on the baby doll and everything. And then whenever I guess she got, then he'd go put it on the wall. And he said that there was a baby that there was a baby doll that cleared their entire wall. And so yeah, so with all her mental issues, um, I guess after she had the twins, I'm guessing they were probably born in the 60s because I did find out twins run in every family. That they were twin boys, and after she had them, and he found a place for them. Um, then she lost it so much that he had to put her back into a facility for about 6 months. And whenever she would get that bad, that's what he would do. He would just throw her back in the facility for about 6 months and do whatever he had to do, and then he'd come back out.
Kimmie, we're not even 10 minutes in, and you just gave a mouthful. Oh my God. But I want to go back
Okay,
just for a
good.
second because what I caught, you said whenever I was born, do you know your
Uh-huh.
birthday?
Yeah, I actually I have a picture of the little thing back in the day. Back in the day, they used to write down and put it in a book in the library. That's when they were recorded. I actually have a picture. It said Baby Girl Anderson. It has Susie's name and it has Robert's name. It has the address and the day I was born and then time. Yeah, this is a real.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to get clarity on that. Because I know sometimes in
Yeah.
adoption that can happen. You may or may not know your actual birth date. Your mom gave birth to you at the age of
Mhm.
13, and your father was in his 50s. It sounds like you're the product of rape. Okay. That's heavy. Have you ever taken a moment to sit in that and really understand? My mother's only 13 years older than me, and my father is 50 plus years older than me. Because
Okay.
if she had mental issues, even if she didn't have mental issues, but at the age of 13, she can't consent to sexual
And
intercourse.
that's why my grandma told him you either marry my daughter or and I don't know if that was I can't answer because they're all gone now. But My thing is that, I mean, maybe that was her way of knowing that, well, he would take care of her, not knowing that their kids are all going to be gone. You know, he's given, after I was taken, he found people to give them to, you know, and they kept one daughter.
Your grandmother was okay with this much older gentleman marrying his young daughter?
And yeah, from what my aunt told me, that's pretty much the ultimatum that, you know, because you always,
So either jail or marriage. That was the only
yeah,
option.
it's either that or prison. Yeah.
I wasn't
But then,
expecting to hear that. I don't even know where to go after that because that is not just an age gap. An age gap by 10 years might even be
right.
okay, but you're talking 13 and you said he was
Well,
51?
yeah, I think it was 51. It was between 51 and 56.
51 and 56, right? So he was several years older
Daddy,
than
daddy.
her. And he already had a
Right.
family.
And he had already been married to the southern lady that had, I think they had 10 kids. I mean, I see them all on my ancestry, but yeah, I think there was 10 of them. There might have been 11. I know one died when he was a baby.
Kimmy, when you realized these are my parents, this is what happened, and this is how I got here, what was your first thought, your first reaction? Because I know that had to come with a lot of weight.
So whenever I did all this, I was actually at work. And whenever I said that my first cousin went to work, within 30 days, I went for my entire life thinking I was the only child. I had to be the only one. Within 30 days, I found out that he was married and he had at least 10 other kids. They had, I mean, me, and he knew that there was another one named Chris, and he knew of Pam. And that I mean, I felt like I was just weighted down because I got a whole bunch of information in less than 30 days. I got pictures of what
Yeah.
Robert looked like. I got the only picture of Susie that anybody can find, except for when she was a baby. Um, I got pictures of three of my half brothers, and I mean, it was just all this stuff. Just went, phew. I mean, I didn't know where to go. I thought I was going to lose my mind, really. But I just had to channel through it and then decide, okay, well, I have all this information now. What do I want to do with it?
Yeah. And I mean, even if you did have a moment of breakdown, that would have been reasonable given the information that you just learned in such a short amount of time. When you learned that your mother had some sort of mental illness, were you ever informed of what her mental illness was?
Yes, actually, so after everything kind of unfolded, I found my brother Chris, and I drove, and I live in Texas, and so I drove to Arkansas where he was at in Fort Smith, and I went to go meet him. And he's very like, he has trust issues, and he was adopted, and his mom passed away when he was younger, but he had a lot of trust issues, and he just said no. He goes, now if I don't talk a lot, just no, because I just don't. Kind of withdraw. And I said, okay, it's all right. I talked enough for both of us. We're good.
Yeah.
And so I made a weekend and I went to go pick him up. And so we decided we were going to go shoot pool. We went to the pool hall where he was comfortable. And we probably hit the pool balls like twice. And after that, all we did was sit down and talk. We talked about anything and everything, about how he knew who they were. He was young. We talked about his kids and my kids. And whenever we went to go meet, and I talked to my Aunt Joyce. Now, she was the first one, my first aunt I talked to. And she was just like, she was going to tell me about the babies about every 18 months. She told me a lot. She did tell me there were a lot of mental issues. And then, so me and Chris go up there to meet cousins and um, my aunts and more cousins and, great aunts. And I mean, there was probably about 15 or 20 of us there. And so we went and we met them all. Well, then I got really close with my one aunt, and she was telling me that, she told me a lot of the issues that she had. So I think it's important that I let the other ones know, hey, look, because these are things that can pass down into generations that my mom and dad didn't know anything about, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's whenever I was told. So whenever me and my aunt Shirley we started talking, then she was telling me about, a lot of the illnesses that she had and how, like, her and Susie we were really close. And she said, like the first time I didn't know she was pregnant. I thought she was just getting fat. I would go down to her house and we would sit there and play dolls. And so she was one that told me, like, just about everything that, I mean, we're talking about schizophrenia, we're talking about paranoia, we're talking about manic depression, we're talking about major, mental
Yeah.
illnesses, and she had them all.
Right. Because certain things, and it's not to cancel out depression at all, but and I'm just
Right.
using that as an example. But when you weigh the difference between depression and schizophrenia, they're not on the same scale. Schizophrenia comes with a whole lot of more behavior
Right.
issues and things like that. So, and she had this at a very early age, and then it just developed. How did you feel, Kimmy, when you learned this about your biological mother?
Well, my thing is that my first thought was, whenever, so like whenever I was put up for adoption, well, the state took me, they moved me down to Little Rock. So I was down that way. And so whenever my mom and dad, um, whenever they went to go adopt a girl, my dad was in the service and he said he came home one day. Mom was like, "Come on, we got an appointment." He's like, "Where are we going?" And she goes, "We're going to get us a baby girl." And so they went down there and they bring out all these kids that look like them too. And then they picked me. And so all my life I was told, most parents have to keep their kids. Now we got to pick you out of all the girls in the orphanage. They just brought y'all out one by
Yeah,
one and we picked you. And
yeah.
just real quick, a little funny story. Um,
Uh-huh.
was she said that whenever they adopted me, I cost $75.
How much?
$75. And so they took me home, and one of the clauses or whatever on the adoption form was that if there was no bonding within 30 days, you could bring the baby back and you can either get your money back or you can adopt another little girl. So I was known on the street as a Kmart baby because I came with the money.
I was gonna say,
I came with the money back guarantee.
so you had so they had a 30-day
Mhm.
trial period.
Yeah.
Interesting. So,
So the reason I went back to that is because I think that nobody knew any of this. And now that I know it, I have 4 children and then they have children. And not to get into what my daughter's, but I think that she may have some of these issues. And
okay,
now that I know this, I see some of the signs maybe when she was growing up. I mean, she's all right, but, maybe you learn to deal with it. I don't know. But the thing
right.
is that, so my first thought was, number one, should they have a medical history that is included with these kids that are adopted? But then if they do have them, like when my mom and dad really adopted me, if they would known that Susie had, 6 major mental issues, So it's almost like a catch
Right.
22. It's like, it's important for us to know
Of
because we're going to
course.
have kids. But then on the other bit, the parents should know too. But if the parents, would they really come and get these kids if they, if they knew these things? So whenever I found out about all this, I was just like, my first thought was, my kids need to know. Which of course, my oldest
Absolutely.
son already had his kids. Now my youngest daughter just had hers, and then my other two, well, I'm raising my grandson. But yeah, as far as my other son, he doesn't have kids yet. But to me, it's important that they know what's going on
Of
because
course.
it could affect them.
So they're aware. Yeah.
Those are things I didn't even know.
Um, no, of course not. Especially back in those days, it wasn't talked about. We weren't informed. It was just a matter of the best words we would always hear. You're so lucky. You're so
Yeah.
blessed. You're so fortunate. Did you ever hear that
Uh,
growing up? And did you really agree with those
oh, yeah,
sentiments?
yeah. I mean, I've got my dad was in the Air Force, so I know that I was able to do so much more than probably even the kids that were adopted because we got went from Arkansas to California to Texas to Alaska to I mean, we just like my family.
Yeah.
They never, my cousins, my aunts, uncles, they never treated us any different. I have a brother, and actually I picked him out whenever. No, they did the same kind of thing. So
Yeah.
mom and dad said, whenever they brought him in, I was like, "Oh, I want him, I want him," and they're like, "You want him?" And it's just like I was like 4 or 5, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah." Like, okay, well we'll get him. And I'm like, "Oh, does the kid to go home with us?" But my dad has dementia now, and so hearing him tell those stories, it's like he's reliving that moment. So it's just really cute
Yeah.
to see him because he was just like, you were just all excited about bringing him home, and that would have been your brother, and so yeah. But
So you were a part of your brother's adoption process and him being kept with your
it,
family. Oh, that's
yeah,
special.
yeah, I think that I was really
Wow.
blessed. I really do because
Yeah.
like Chris, he just passed away in January. I was blessed to have known him for 6 years. He came and lived with me for a while. I would go up there and visit him, and then him and his girlfriend at the time, they came down and visited. And they moved in and they stayed, about 5 or 6 months with me. And, it was just really, I just feel blessed to have that time with them. Um,
Yeah.
and then anyway, so now he had a lady and they had a baby. He's 2. So now I feel like I get to be a real aunt because even my
Yeah.
other brothers and sisters that I have found, their kids are old. They're like, who's this lady coming into my life? And now I've got a
Of
2-year-old
course.
nephew that I can actually be a nephew with.
Right, because now you're a part of his
Right.
entire life. At 2 years old, he'll always remember that you were always there. So Kim, when you did, first of all, did your parents have any biological children
No, they
of
could.
their own? Your
They
adopted?
could.
No, so it was just you were just all adopted. And how many? Because after Susie and
Robert. Robert.
whatever Robert, after they got married, was it just you? Was it you, Chris, and
Yeah.
some other?
So I was born in 64, and my aunt was telling me that there was a baby born about every, she was figuring 18 months, 18 to 21 months. So they got married in 1963, and she died. And I was told that she was 7 months pregnant because after she had the last baby, the doctor had told Robert, if she gets pregnant again, she's going to die. Whatever you got to do, make sure that she doesn't. Well, she got pregnant. Now, my aunt told me that she was 7 months pregnant when she died, but I called the cemetery and because I want to find out because she said, rumor has it that somebody in the family took the baby. So I called the cemetery and they said that there was I mean, they looked up the whatever, and it didn't say anything about her being pregnant. So she had a stroke, and so I don't know if they were able to save the baby. I mean, I don't even know if really there was. I was just told that she was about 7 months pregnant when she died. And
And how old was she when she died?
let's see, she was no, she was young because she died in '86. So she was, and Gary was born in '86. So she was like between 40 and 44, I think.
Yeah,
And he died almost a month later to the day. Yeah.
really. It's Kimmy. It sounds like, and you don't have to agree, but it sounds like your Susie had some serious mental issues, and then she was raped at 13 years old, almost as if she didn't have a chance at life. I mean, would that be fair to say? I
Yeah.
mean,
I
yeah,
mean, I guess I never, I mean, yeah, I guess I just never looked at the word rape. I mean, but you saying that, I mean, it's a true story, being a daddy's girl, I am a big daddy's girl. Um, this is what hurt me the most was whenever I found out that Robert had passed, not even knowing this man, this before I found out, about all the other stuff. So whenever I found out that he had passed, I was at work and I just had tears come in my eyes. But I didn't know at that point. I didn't know the whole story. And I was just, because I just thought of, man, if that was my dad, because I have my dad. My dad's the matriarch of the entire family, and everybody. But then I found out about Susie afterwards, as far as her mental illnesses and things like that, and then it broke my heart because I thought, like you just said, she didn't have a chance, and I wept over a man that took something from this young girl. That was my first thing,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and
I was going to ask that next, like if you ever saw him as a bad man.
well, there's some stories. Trust me, your battery, my battery, the world don't have long. I mean, but um, you know, I bet he wasn't a role model, but I like to say he's a bad man, but I mean, he is a bad man. But I just feel like there's got to be good in everyone. I mean, that's how I see people. Period. But I just really think that
Yeah.
whenever they kept Pam and raised Pam, and she was, I think, about 13 when they passed away. My thing is that maybe through her he tried to do right. I don't know. I mean, I've heard stories and about other issues, but I think that there had to have been a good part in him somewhere. I just don't think that it had, for whatever reason, it was buried so deep it never came out. Because I like to see that
Yeah.
there's
I
always
mean,
a good in someone, but he had some issues. He really did.
yeah. Yeah. And the reason why I asked that, Kimmy, is because I'm thinking as far as today in 2025, how would I react or respond to knowing this 13-year-old young lady has given birth
Yeah.
by a 50 something year old man? And even if I don't know them personally, I would be furious because
And whenever,
that is obvious,
yes. Whenever I found
right?
out
I,
all that, like I said, but first I found out about him because it was easier because there was more record of him. He was older, he already had kids, or moved, But with Susie, like you said, she didn't have a chance because um
yeah,
I couldn't find her birth certificate anywhere. Um I couldn't find any schooling for her. There I have seen one baby picture of her when she was about maybe two. And then the picture I think that they showed my mom and dad, so whenever they adopted me, they said, okay, well, this is what the mom looks like. And the only picture that so far that I know anybody has of Susie was whenever she was like in Girl Scouts, and because she had on her uniform and she was, standing like that, and
yeah,
that's whenever it hit me. I think that he he took something, you know, something that, I
absolutely.
mean, I that is really something that once it's taken, it you can never get it back,
Right.
and
Especially
yeah,
something like that, especially something so
right,
innocent, right? You're talking about a woman's
yeah,
virginity. That's not something you can borrow.
exactly,
You said it was a sad story. I didn't think it would be this sad, but that's heavy. Did you ever feel anger towards anyone surrounding your adoption
yeah.
story?
So I whenever I raised my kids, my main what I like to say is there's something positive in every story. I mean, sometimes you gotta dig deeper, but there's always
Yeah,
something positive, and that's sometimes whenever you're down, whenever things may not be going, whenever something happens in your life, and you're like, why is this happening? There's a reason. Maybe God knows what it is that we don't, but in His time, He will show us. So my thing was that for her, my heart hurts. I was mad at myself for weeping over a man that number one, I didn't even know, but because he was my biological father,
right.
then I found out what he did. And that really hurt my heart because, like I said, you can't take something from something that can never be got back. And someone that's 13. When I was 13 years old, I was on a softball team. I lived in Alaska and we are going to state. And, I didn't care about boys. I was so busy in bowling and softball that that's all that mattered to me, you know.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
whenever I sit back and I look at it like that, at 13, I was living my life. And at 13, she was having kids and, just her life was kind of taken away.
Yeah, and that's the thing because, like you said, at 13 you were playing softball in Alaska. At
Yeah,
13, I was riding my
yeah,
bike and playing double dutch, jumping, doing those types of things that 13-year
right,
old girls do. And when I look at the fact that when I see 13-year-old girls, even in public or in the area, it's kind of like I still see them as a baby. They may or may not have even hit puberty yet. So you look at your mom's situation and I'm like, wow, while you're trying to figure out life, while your brain has not even fully developed, you have to figure out how to be a mom until the state steps in.
yeah. So yeah, it's just
It's
whenever I guess whenever I heard about her condition and things that she went through, then I guess I was mad at myself for weeping over him. You know what I'm saying? Because I literally had tears in my eyes, and I think it's because I'm a daddy's girl that, to me, not all
yeah,
dads, but I could never imagine a dad being different than my dad because in my eyes I have the best dad, you know,
right.
and you know
Same.
what I'm saying? I mean, I got to go hunting and fishing, and we got to travel, and and he always made time for the kids, but he was a breadwinner, and he took care of the house, and so whenever I think that was probably why I wept because to me it was just like at that moment, like, what would I do if I lost my dad? But
Right.
then,
Because the thing is, Kimmy, when you look at your father and the patriarch of your family and knowing what his role was, you now have the arduous task of not seeing other
oh
fathers
yeah,
the way you see your own
you're
father. And so as a result of that, you're like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me all dads are like not
no,
like
right?
my dad? Because right, I'm with you. My father was phenomenal. I was a
Yeah,
daddy's girl and I could ask the moon and he would try to bring it to me. But then you realize, wait, my adoptive father or my father is completely different from my biological father.
right.
Yet this is the man that I wept over. I shed tears over him. How did you handle that anger? Because at some point when you get over that anger, what's your next step?
Um, well, I think that part of because it wasn't long after I found all this information in April, and then I found Chris, and then I talked to my sister Pam, and then I decided to take a trip up because I wanted to meet them. I mean, at least Chris, because Pam lives a little bit further away. I want to meet my family. I want to see. I want to, I want to know more because I
Fair.
need to know. It's just, I think the need of
Of
other
course.
things that mental and physical, and how do people die? What's running in the family? What's not running in the family? So part of that was me and my daughter made a trip, my youngest daughter, and I said I really want you to meet Aunt Shirley. She is phenomenal, blah blah blah. She's awesome. And so we went to where Robert and Susie were buried, and he's got his first wife on one side, and then there's Robert, and there's Susie, and so she doesn't have like a headstone or whatever. So I just I don't know, just for a moment, I just went there and it was like, I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, even though she's not here,
Yeah.
she,
Yeah.
I don't know, for, whatever she had down here, heaven is, I believe that it's gone, but maybe she'll see that I felt so bad that that was my way of apologizing for letting, I guess for the tears I cried for a man that didn't deserve them.
Yeah, yeah. They died though as a couple. They were still
Yes.
married, and unfortunately, you never got to
Either
meet
one.
either one.
Yeah, she died in February of '86, and he died like 5 or 6 weeks later. Yeah,
Mhm. Adoption, and I sometimes I am annoyed and I get angry with the state laws that they don't mind removing a child. And I mean, granted, if a child is being
right.
neglected and abused, and there is no other family member who can step in and take over the role, I understand that. However, where my problem comes is that the state is okay with this child growing up not having any connection to their biological family, no visitation. even after adoption, and I know that you legally become the child of your adoptive parents, but the truth is you still have a biological family out there that you have no knowledge of. And so these state laws, and I know they vary from state to state, but they really drive me insane because I hate that for adopted children, even like myself, so and I just find that to be so unfair because we don't have the same rights as kept
Yeah.
children. Life when you become a mom and you explain your story to your children, was that hard?
Well, so like telling them I was adopted, that was easy because my whole life that was like, um, I was special.
That was your
Yeah,
imprint.
because my mom and dad always told us. There's never been a day that I don't remember that I wasn't adopted. From the earliest of my that I can remember, I've always known I was adopted. Um,
Yeah.
so my children have always known that, because that's not something that I hid because it was made to be so
Right.
special because, mom and dad couldn't have kids. So they got to go pick me out, you know. I think it was harder for me whenever um finding out all the mental, and then going it wasn't really hard, just I felt like they needed to know. It was the need that they
Of
had to know
course.
because some things they may not get carried down every generation. They may skip a generation, you know. Twins run in every generation. I got mad at myself, not really mad, but I was playing around with Pam. I was like, how did you get twins? I'm the oldest. I'm supposed to have twins, you know?
Yeah.
But so opening up to them about a lot of, things, even though they all had kids except for two, they were glad that they knew. Um, of course, my oldest son had already had all his kids, you know? So,
Right.
but I think that it is important that we share because that's one thing that me and my brother do is that we share the medical a lot. If one thing happens to me, I mean, if I find out something new, I call him, you know. And
Right.
now,
Of course.
I do pay him Lori too, but I mean, it's because he knows that somebody, he may have diabetes, whatever. I don't know. But all of this stuff runs in the family, and all of this stuff can be passed down. And where I think that my daughter may have one thing, I mean, his son or daughter may have something else, and then so it could be something that I think that at the end of the day we should all share. So I wrote down, I've got a whole list of things that I have found out, and I take a picture, and so that way I have it. Too much news starts to be added, then I send it to well, I sent it to Rob, but now that I found Lori back, I found Lori, oh man, not even 6 months ago.
And
My
Lori
sister.
is,
Yeah.
I was going to say another sibling. Wow, just 6 months
Yeah.
ago.
And so I just got her. And so now that I have Pam and Lori, and like I said, Chris recently passed away. So now I just, if they tell me anything, I just write it down, just keep it up, and then that way I can take a picture and send it to them, and my kids will know. And,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Because what you shared with me earlier was that your father had, Robert had 20
right. He had 10
kids.
from the first, and then like I said, my aunt would figure out that the way she told me was they at least had 10 kids because they got married in 63. They died in 86.
Mm.
And she had a baby about every 18 to 20 months, 18 to 21 months. That's a lot of kids.
That is
Yeah.
a lot. A lot. But I mean, in total, he had 20. And I mean, I thought I had the largest family in the world because my father was one of 17. But it just goes to show you that they were busy and times were a lot different
Right.
back then. And
Right.
that's the best way we can put that. So now you're building a relationship with another biological sister. What's that like?
So the one thing I like to say is because there's no book, and you could go to experts and stuff about. So whenever you find this person, what do you say? How do you, whatever. But so I just pretty much laid it down to first it was Chris, and
Mhm.
he decided that it was him and Pam. And so I was like, hey, It says Chris. Da, da, da. Now he was one that had the different birthdays. So he had two different dates. My brother Rob has got 2 different years, so I don't even know how old he is. But
Right.
so it's kind of like, well, my name is Kim, and I was adopted, and so I just kind of laid out for him. And with Pam and Chris, it was probably the hardest because I didn't find them through ancestry or, you know, none of the other ones, none of the DNAs. I found them because whenever somebody in Robert's family died, there was a picture of Chris when he was little, and they named him. His name was Robert. So then his mom named him Chris. And then I now have a brother Robert. So I've never seen that movie, My Brother Daryl, My Other Brother Daryl. But I used to give the boys a hard time and say, I got my brother Robert, my other brother Robert, and both juniors, I give them a hard time like that.
Yeah.
So with Pam and Chris, it was harder because there was no DNA. And just asked him, excuse me. And Chris knew he was adopted. And so I was just like, hey, and I talked to his aunt first. And she was like, well, it's up to him if he wants to reach out to you. I said, well, here's my number. I'm not going to pressure him. This, whatever. I gave him a whole, this is it. But Pam, I asked her, I was like, well, I'm your older sister. And she's like, really? I didn't know I had an older sister. I'm like, yeah. Crazy. The year she was
Mm.
born, I had actually wanted a little sister. And I got a book and I gave it to my mom. Said, Mom, you need to read this. I really want a little sister. And that was the same year she was born. And then with Robert, I mean with Rob, I thought his daughter did the DNA. So it took me forever to find, because I'm just putting the names and all this other stuff I got. But then I actually thought that it was maybe his wife, ex-wife, that was my sister, because
Mm.
I mean, she kind of, I don't know, to me, I was like, oh, well, she kind of looks like, got dark hair, whatever. But then whenever I reached out to her, she's like, oh, no, honey, it's not me that you're looking for, it's my ex-husband. So then
Mm-hmm.
she showed me his Facebook page, and then I did the whole 9 yards with him. And then, of course, he told me how he was adopted and how he was born. And he was born in the toilet. So, yeah. So,
And
yeah,
that's
at a gas station. Yeah. So that's why, we each have our stories, and it's crazy.
right.
So
Yeah.
whenever I met him, so I told him, and we shared a lot of information. I mean, the first day whenever I finally, we finally connected, I'm gonna say we probably spent 2, 3 hours on the phone. I mean, it was just like, how was your
Mm.
life? And that was my life. And he
Yeah.
lives right down
Yeah.
the road
Yeah.
from my
Sure.
cousins in Oklahoma. It is crazy.
So you were still in. He had some closeness to your family. I mean, as in
Oh yeah.
proximity.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. So I live in Texas, but so far, well, Chris lived in Fort Smith, but everybody else in Oklahoma got found. And they were all born, like I was born in Fort Smith, and they were all born like, I don't know, was it Salisaw or Stillwater or something like that? So they're all born up
Hmm.
in that one area. And I was born in Fort Smith. So yeah, it's just kind of,
Wow. 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 So now that Kimmie knows the full adoption story of, how she was conceived and the story of her biological parents and how they met and all of this. Now that you're no longer angry, was it therapy? What played a part in your full healing, or are you still healing?
um, well, I didn't do therapy. I did just a lot of, I guess, soul searching. And, like I said, I think that going to the gravesite kind of helped me as far as whenever, I wept for a man that didn't deserve my tears, you know.
Right.
And then I wept for a woman that sometimes I think, she didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
It's like, was her mental age ever past 13? Was it ever past 7? I mean, I don't know. So
Yeah.
I think going there, seeing her gravesite, you know, there's one thing I want to do for her is I want to be able to get her a headstone. Um, I think that even though I don't know these people and it's really sad, I said, and I don't think that God would have a reason for this, but the thing is that however the state got me and took me to Little Rock, I will forever be grateful. I was mad because I wept at poor man that didn't serve him. This poor little girl didn't know what, probably know what was going on to her with her. And I think just going to the website kind of helped me, I guess you could say, because when I just stood there, I'm just like, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say,
Yeah, yeah,
And there, it was just, yeah. I never went to therapy. I think I just did a lot of soul searching as far as, all the years I thought that either she was either, sorry, my dog's right. He's trying to knock on a little thing, but all the years of thinking that she was either, loose or, you know what I'm saying? I just felt like I owed her an
right,
apology. So whenever I went to the grave and I was just like, I'm sorry. It's like I had so many feelings. I'm just like, well, you find the positive everything. Well, if she was a hoe, like what they got, woo, it's me, you know.
right,
And I actually
right,
think I'm a good person.
right.
So, but that's why I say that, sometimes, that's why I can't judge someone for something you hear. You find out for yourself.
Right.
And like I said, I just did a lot of praying and I can tell her I'm sorry all
Yeah,
day long here. But then I actually went to the gravesite, and I just looked and there's really nothing there, I just,
right. And the thing is, because at 13 years old, um, even those in her family probably would have called her fast. Oh, she's just Susie, just being fast, right? Because I know in the Black community that is the word we use when it comes to a young girl. And if you find out that she's pregnant, you don't think rape. The first thing we want to say is, "Oh, she's
especially back
she's
then.
fast."
Yeah,
Especially back then. And so now when you look at a 13-year-old, it's kind of like, can a 13-year-old really be fast? And if so, what led her to be that fast? Like, why isn't she just outside playing and having the dolls that she enjoys? What led to her so-called being
yeah,
fast, right? So those are the questions that you have to ask. And then when you look at the age gap, well, maybe she wasn't so fast. Because it's different if your father was also 13 years older than you and the two of them were playing house or something like that. But no, this was a man, an adult male who had a family, a wife,
yeah,
children, who knew what came with that, opposed to this 13-year-old little
right.
girl.
And,
So
and
he knew where
yeah.
babies came from.
And I do know that my grandmother, she knew Robert before. I mean, however she knew him, I don't know. I just know that she knew of him. She knew him.
Mhm.
So my aunt was telling me. So that's why I guess maybe he came to see him one time under a bridge or something. I don't know. But that's whenever all her kids were being taken away. And she's like, look, they took my baby to the moon so she could get her back from him. That's what he did. So,
As you continue to process it all, each day gets better, I imagine.
yeah. And, it's funny because, like, first I met Chris, then I met Pam, then I met Rob, and then I met Lori. And I was making a joke about how I was going to, I don't know, I did something else. And Chris was like, no, you've already found enough of us, you know? And
Right.
so it was like the sisters and brothers that I have, I like to think
Mhm.
that, I'll first, it's just, I mean, I love them. They're my brothers and my sisters. Um,
Right.
I think I would like to think that for the situation and everything that we've been through, I mean, I think that we're close. I mean, I'm closer to Robert than I am my brother I grew up with. So
Yeah. 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 I mean, and that's because you two share a
mhm,
bond. I mean, you didn't have to grow up
right,
together to know that that bond that you have, that DNA connection that you have, is just something that's embedded in the two of
right.
you, and it's not something that can really be broken. So, I mean, I commend you and congratulations on finding your siblings and having the strength to share that, because that's a huge age gap. Um, And when you look at the fact and the, the large scope of things, you're realizing like I'm the product of rape. This He knew where babies come from. She may not have, because back in those days, that was the forbidden question. You couldn't ask where babies came from. So, and to see that you are now an adult, a beautiful adult woman, you are a mother, you are a grandmother that actually survived some, something that really could have taken you
Yeah.
out, because a lot of times when adoptees find out their full stories, oh, they'll lose it. There's many resort to drugs, crime, all the lifestyles that, we don't want to be a part of. And you didn't. You survived, and you did that with grace, it looks like.
I just, I was raised that family's everything. And even if, Robert and Susie, I mean, yeah, that's my biological parent, but whenever I think of my siblings, those are my family. That's my family, along with my brother that I was raised with. But,
Of
I
course.
know that not all
Yeah.
situations end up like this. I know that sometimes they're like, oh, no, I don't want to see you. I don't wanna, just like it's a taboo. But, I've been blessed that,
Exactly.
I mean, I just love them, I mean, it's just like my sisters are my friends and they're my really good friends. And my brother, I mean, even though I'm the oldest, there's just a joke because I tell them all the time, look, you don't want to pull out my big sister card because I've been a big sister all my life and I know how to use it.
Mm,
But,
yeah, of
but
course. Oh,
we just have a different kind of connection, and I,
of course.
I just there's nothing I've just been so blessed because I know that they didn't have to open me, welcome me and talk to me and share what their
Yeah.
story was, and I'm just so thankful that they did because I just think that we've all grown in a different kind of way. You know what I'm saying? Because
Mhm.
people that are raised with their biological parents, they don't know, that if you meet somebody else and we weren't raised by them, but yet we have all survived, and
Right.
that right there is such a good feeling that I have these new friends, and and I love them all dearly, and I'll do anything for them. That it's just it will never take away about how I was born or anything, but I just feel like at least I'm glad that the state did not make me stay with them because the state took
Right.
me,
Exactly.
and that right there is,
Yeah.
I think maybe that was just I just look at that like, okay, that's a relief because I mean, if he's going to do her at 13, what else has he done?
So that's the question you may or may not want
Yeah,
answered,
I don't want to answer
because
it. No, thank you.
right, right, exactly. Because who's to say she was the only one? Because parents may handle it differently. There could have been, and of course we don't know, but there are cases when a young lady is, with child, and at that age, the mother would just keep it quiet, let the child be born, and pass it off to another family member or an orphanage, or place it in for adoption or something like that. And no one will ever know that this young lady was pregnant at this age. It happens more times than not. But you absolutely survived, and I'm thankful to your parents, the ones who raised you, because they sound a lot like mine. They made sure that you had a good life, and they gave you what little Kimmie was supposed to have. They gave you family,
Yeah,
right? They nurtured you. They told you the truth about who you came
right.
from, and that you were adopted, and all of those things. And those are the adoptive parents that I absolutely love, because there are so many adoptees who don't even know that they're adopted.
Yeah. So there's everything there.
And yeah, and I can't imagine not knowing. Um, I, of course, I know what it's like not to want to share, because I lived my whole life like that. But I always knew. My mom told me when I was very young, and so on. I'm so thankful that she did, because these are things that we should know as
Yeah.
adoptees. Kept children know we didn't ask for this life, so we should absolutely be aware. that we are adopted. Kimmie, I keep calling you
That's
Kim,
okay.
and you didn't give me permission.
Whenever I was younger, my daddy and mom would call me Kimmie. My friends call me Kim. And I got a job where you have to use your birth name. So now that I'm older, everybody calls me Kimmie, and my dad calls me Kim.
Oh,
So yeah.
reverse.
So I just either one, I'm good.
Yeah. Kemi, thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm always grateful for these moments. And I say it after, I speak to anyone who joins me on this platform, because you don't have to be transparent. You don't have to be so courageous. You don't have to share. You don't have to do any of that. And because you took the time out of your day to share your story with me, I am touched. And to hear your story, I am like also flabbergasted. And so I'm wondering what's the rest of my day going to be like after I spoke to you, because that age gap, is just it hurts in a sense. It does hurt, because it doesn't sound like your mom was a hoe. It doesn't sound like that at all.
Exactly.
It just sounds like she was a victim, and some things she was victimized to. It was beyond her control. But I am thankful that the state knew she was probably not able to care for her children.
Me too.
I just wish the state, yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the same with me. My birth mother had a drug addiction. She was not, nope, nope. So I'm glad my parents, raised me and did what they did, because I likely would not be sitting here. I don't know what story would have been written for me had that
Yeah.
not been the case. And so I'm always thankful for adoptive parents when they adopt the right way, because some don't. But thank you, Kimmy. You are an amazing soul. You are a beautiful woman. And I'm so thankful that we had this moment. And so I hope that your children and your grandchildren understands who mommy and grandmommy is, and love you even the more, because you deserve
Oh,
it.
thank you. Well, I saw that. I was just like, oh, well, this was all about it, just in case, because I think that every story is different and not all of them
Yes.
are bad experiences. I've been blessed to have good all the way around. Um,
Yes.
and, I think that, I didn't even know this was out there until I talked to you. And I think that
Right.
sometimes it's important because people don't always know what it's like. If you're raised by
Right.
your family, you don't know that, you know, there's things that just by knowing or adopted can affect us as far as, you know,
Life
yeah,
choices.
exactly.
Just life choices. Because when you're adopted and you feel unwanted, sometimes you can become a hoe.
Yeah,
Sometimes you can become an alcoholic. Sometimes you can become a drug user, or sometimes you can resort to violence.
exactly.
Anything else can play out. So when you have, individuals like yourself and like me who sit and can now openly discuss their stories, it is my hope that there's a takeaway from, our stories, and that some people who are adopted, who are still ashamed to talk about it, that they can see the strength and the courage that we now have. And again, I did not always have this courage
Right.
at all, but I'm proud of the new me. I feel like a new person now that I can talk about it.
It makes a
So
difference.
it's my,
It's like something is
yeah.
let off of your shoulders.
And the thing is, because we all have a story, and it's not for us to be shameful about, but as I say, if each one can teach one, then I think it'll bring us back to humanity, and, we can understand each other. Not just, the difference between cultures, but, in our adoption stories, we can absolutely help each
Mhm.
other, and if color is the first thing you see, then you are the problem.
Yeah.
Because, we have to get past that and understand where this individual came from to see where they are now as a human being. So I love these moments. I really, really do. I don't take them for granted. I just love it. And, I love, even as hurtful and as sad as the stories can be, I still love it, because I'm like, so it's not just myself who has a takeaway. I want everyone to look and watch Kimmy's story and realize, oh, wow, that was like me. She survived. You can too. So
Yeah.
thank you,
Well, thank you
Kimmy.
for having me. I've enjoyed it. I'm glad I got to meet you, and yeah, it's been nice.